Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello. So we are recorded today, this episode. I think when it airs, actually, I'm at a baseball game with my mom right now. Yeah, it's fun. I assume it will be anyways. We're going to pretend like it is. Anyways, we have a return guest on the show. She is absolutely fabulous, so I'm excited to have her come back. So let's welcome Mary Elizabeth Jackson. Hello.
Hello. I am so excited to be here. And yeah, we've known each other for a couple of years now, I think.
I think so, because you were one of the first. Like, you were in the beginning.
Wow. And we don't get to chat as often as I would like because we're just busy. I mean, we're living life and mamas and, it's just, life is like, it just doesn't stop.
Right? It really doesn't. It's just like, just keep going and trucking and doing. And it's like, all right, well, sure.
And then before you know it, it's September 1st. And I'm going, what did I even do in August? What did I do?
I know. I can't believe that it's, summer's over. That my husband keeps saying summer's over. And I'm like, summer technically has 3 more weeks. All right. It does not end until September 19th. But
yeah. Well, if
break is over.
If you were here where I live this past week, it was over 100 pretty much every day, close to 110, and unbelievable. And we just finally got rain today. Praise the Lord, we finally got rain.
Good. So. We had rain yesterday. So
good. we had neighbors who were burning wood, like they cut down stuff. And one of my neighbors texted me and she goes, we smelled it when we were outside and then figured out who it was. So then she sent me this thing because it was even on the news today here locally. We have a burn ban going on until we get substantial rain. And I said, well, you need to send that to them. So then she did, and they put it out. And then another neighbor last night, and it was like, what is wrong with these people? And the wind was kicking up, and we have all this forest over here next to these houses. And she's like, I don't want my house burned down. I said, well, then you just need to be the burn ban police and send it to them, call them, harass them,
Jeez. Yeah, actually, this is the first year in a while that we didn't have a burn ban for at least a day or two here. Like we had a very rainy summer, which is not usual.
See, we usually do have most of our summers are pretty rainy around here.
Oh,
and
so
every once in a while we have one like this, and it's just like hotter than a firecracker.
So we switched. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway.
So I know who you are, and those who've been watching the show for a very long time know who you are. But for the new listeners, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I am a wife of 30 years. OMG. That gives my age away just a little bit. And and I have 3 children. 2 of them are on the spectrum. And so I have been an advocate for special needs, particularly autism, but it is creeped out, and that's not a nice word. It's spilled out into other areas and for autism. And I am a children's author, but also I'm just been in my 6th anthology, which is so cool to be in books with other authors and see their stories and meet them and stuff. And then I have a live show. It's an author show on online, but I also have a radio show that I just took a podcast I've been doing and it became a radio show in January. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I have like 343,000 plus listeners around the globe. And so it's like so exciting because I've been doing this like over 6 years. So I am just beyond thrilled. And I do authors, but then also it's a lot in the writing world of publishers and publicists and, songwriters, music, but inspirational stories too. So
that is awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but it's just Saturdays and Sundays. So like for the next week, weeks or month, I'm not going to do any interviews because I'm booked out so far.
Right?
Like they're already, they won't air until December. And I'm like, it's not fair to do that. You know what I mean? To make people
Right?
have to wait that long. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stop for a little while, which
Yeah.
is, I'm really glad. But there are people all the time, and it probably happens to you too, that I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to interview. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready to write an article, like the network I work with is Freshwood Media Network, but we write articles for Newsbreak. And so my sister-in-law just took a job here a little while, months and months ago, with Vanderbilt University Hospital with the AI department.
Oh,
And so I'm going to write an article about that because there are so many unknowns. And
right? Yeah.
she's in there working. She started actually one of the departments for it, but she's in there like trying to police it all, where are the boundaries, making sure everything is ethical and stuff. So that's what she's focused on. And I'm like, yeah, people will be interested in this for sure.
Yeah, because it is such a new kind of thing, and like what
Yes.
is right, what is wrong, how much should you use it? Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
it's a
because
lot.
for us, for creators, okay, so this is the double-edged sword for us. I was thinking about this when I was thinking about what I was going to write. So for authors and uh, and okay, I'm not sure what your situation is as an author, but I know my publisher made us sign a contract saying we will not use anything AI generated. Like it's like illegal, right? With the so we are not allowed to. Everything has to be written from us.
Yeah.
So I stay away from all of that. But the thing that's hard is this. So it's great for a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
And for people pumping out content and, doing like articles articles, they really should be written by you personally also,
Yeah.
but there are certain areas where it's really great to use all that stuff. But as a musician and an artist, the landscape is changing and it's really, I'm going to say this word, screwing with everyone because like I have a daughter who's in school for animation and filmmaking, and they've already been sat down last school year and talked to by the head of animation department and said, we don't know what the future looks like for you with AI coming in. And it's scared a bunch of them
Yeah. Oh,
because
for
it
sure.
threatens their livelihood. It threatens our livelihood as creators, even though there's a lot of positives to it, but it's also a threat, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I know there's in the business group I was in, one of the people is like a computer programmer guy, and he was talking when Chat GPT came out, and he's talking all about it, whatever. I'm like, this is I mean I mostly write nonfiction, so I don't think that could pump out the same content I'm doing because it's
Right.
lived experience, but
Yeah.
they
That
could
makes it
probably
hard
something,
because you can't fake that.
right? But
Yeah.
when I try to change and do the kids book or whatever, then it's like, is this written by a real person? Is it not? But Amazon, when you do upload your stuff to Amazon, it does ask you to check off if it was AI, if there was any part of it that was AI content.
You know why? Back when the fires were happening in Hawaii, somebody wrote a book using AI under a doctor's name, and it became an instant bestseller. And then Amazon found out about it, and they took it off the shelves, and nobody could buy it anywhere, and they changed their rules, and that's why.
Oh, I didn't know that. Was interesting. Yeah, I personally think if you're going to be creative, if you're going to sell your work, it needs to be your work.
It needs to be authentic because as a creator, it's an extension of who we are and what kind of flows through us. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. So, um, anyway, but
So speaking of who we are,
yeah,
perfect segue. Um, you're a mom. I'm a mom. You have kids on the spectrum. I have a kid on the spectrum. Let's talk about it.
let's talk about it. There's so much to talk
There's
about.
there's a
And you know
lot.
what? There's all kinds of research that's coming out all of a sudden about ADHD and parenting. And I was trying to jump on that and read and listen and watch a video recently. Very interesting about, we really do have to parent our children differently than old school doesn't work. What our grandparents did doesn't work. But the thing that I saw about the ADHD and parenting is certain things that parents do that are typical for parents by nature to do, really shuts down an ADHD child and then creates XYZ. And I guess one of my things I'm passionate about is, do we really want to continue putting broken people out in the world? Like, I'm not perfect, but I certainly have tried to parent my kids differently because they were different in a sense, not in a bad way, just how I was raised didn't work, And so you probably figured that out too. We have to be more in tune with our kids. We have to listen. We have to almost anticipate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to be empathic with your kids and use those spidey senses,
Yes.
Yeah.
How old are yours now?
24 and almost 21 and 11. So they're very spread out. So I've seen a very wide variety of things happen in the autism world, like from my 24-year-old at 18 months being diagnosed with texture sensitivity that the doctor said there's nothing to do and she'll outgrow it. No. Because then it went into all kinds of other areas of sensory to not knowing anything because this is what the doctor told me. We listened to the pediatrician, right? I had to learn to listen to my mom's instinct about things, to having two children with not delayed or no verbal skills, going into the public, school system with a child who was not verbal. Her language, she would clutter, like she would go ticka 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 ticka, okay, mommy, and that was her language. That was it. Like for years. So I had to start with pictures and the board. If you're an autism mom out there, delayed child language mom, nonverbal, you know what I'm talking about. It's the first and you do the pictures. So it's 2-word sentences and first we eat dinner, then we take a bath. And this is how we have to break everything down for a child. And I had to teach my middle daughter her own language. Like she couldn't speak English. Like it was a totally different language. And so life requires you to pull up your big girl pants or your big boy pants and live life differently. It calls you to be a different kind of parent. And there's no way out of it unless you want to be a complete failure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, sorry. It's just, I mean, I don't know. That's just that's the way I look at it. It's like I can either step up to the plate or just lay down. And there was really for me no choice, right? I had to help my kids be successful.
A lot of people used to say to me when Love was younger, I was working as an employment counselor, and people would talk about their date night because they have a once a week date night with their spouse and whatever. I'm like, oh wow, that's
I don't know what that's like.
I don't have that. They're like, well, why don't you just get a babysitter? Why don't you just go ask the high school who does babysitting? This random person I don't know. Let's just go ask them. And I'm like, okay, let me tell you a little bit about my kid here. Right. And as they got to know me and with Lev's meltdowns, they were violent, very violent meltdowns to the point of going to the hospital.
I'm so sorry.
And so people go, wow, I don't know how you do it. And I go, because you have no choice, right?
Yeah.
Just like you were saying, I'm going to lay down and just die. Basically, I'm going to lay down and fail, or I'm going to step up and I'm going to do whatever it is that has to be done.
And some days are big failures and some days are wins. And it's like any parenting with any child. I don't care, typical or not. You have good days and you have bad days. And when you have the good days, those are the ones that carry you through. Those are the ones that you cherish. And those are the ones you go, okay, today maybe I have done one thing right. Because parenting is a constant battle. It's a constant facing yourself. And, like when they're little, if you have a typical child, it's pretty easy to have those schedules and get everybody doing this and everybody doing that. And it's fantastic when it all works like that in sync. But when you have a child who maybe they're an eloper, maybe they have no skills at all verbally, maybe they're physically aggressive. And like, you can't go in public with those children. I mean, it's a different life.
Right?
Different
Exactly.
life. Yes. It's a different
Now,
life.
the phrasing of this question is going to sound absolutely horrible. I'm going to preface this, but it's because of how we've led up to this question, okay?
Okay.
What would you say was your biggest failure? And for those who aren't watching, I'm using quotations, as a parent. And I mean, like you said, we have lots of days that are failures.
Mm.
So what is one that kind of sticks out in your
Mm.
mind? I mean, I have some, I'm like, oh yeah, that day was a failure. That day was a failure. What sticks out in your mind?
Mine was not knowing that my child was being abused at school in her classroom. And that's a big one. That's a big one because not everybody goes through that with their child. That would be my one of, let's say, I'm not perfect. One of my biggest regrets in my life. She endured for 8 months.
Aw. So how did you finally, so for parents who are in the same situation, their child cannot tell them what's happening, how
Mm.
did you finally
Well,
figure it out?
well, we got a call from the police department letting us know, so that's a little bit
Oh,
different. That's a little different than, like, all of a sudden you, like, see bruises and you see this and then that. Like, we saw things and then we confronted, and it was always there was a reason or there was a, "No, that's not happening, and that's not going on here."
mhm.
But the police department called to let us know what was the teacher been removed. There's an investigation between the school, the police department, and child services. So it's a pretty serious situation.
Mhm.
So what I will say for parents, if your child, it's really hard. You've got to read the signs. But if your child is crying every single day, they're going to school, there is a problem. And it
Yeah.
may not be that your child just has separation anxiety. There may actually be something going on. And it could be as simple as this. These kiddos who are coming in, I do talks about highly sensitive, intuitive, empathic kids, okay? Because it all meshes together with our kiddos. But our kiddos on the spectrum are really sensed, they're tuned in to everything and everyone around them. And it may be that when they go to school, they just feel everybody else's stuff, like their stress, and maybe another kid's had a really bad day at home and there's no telling what's going on. But your child is picking up all of this, right? And it's affecting them. And if they don't have good verbal skills because of delay or things like that, remember that behavior is communication. So you've got to pay attention to that behavior that's happening because they really are trying to communicate with you. So you need to figure out for your child what works for them. Can they write? Can they draw? Can you show them pictures that they can point to and they can relate to what they see in the picture? And if anything else, then, the least thing, have a therapist involved that would be able to help. But it could just be they're picking up on the energy in the room of where they're at. I think special education classrooms are very highly stressful situations, period.
Yeah.
But if things aren't resolving, so for me, one of the things that happened with my daughter was she was potty trained and then all of a sudden she started having accidents at school. So that's a sign for your child is stressed. Maybe the classroom environment is not right for your child. You as the advocate have to make these kind of decisions for your child. It's like going to the doctor. This has actually happened to me, and she was a teenager. Was my daughter a preteen, I guess? And the doctor saying, "No, you don't have that. There's nothing wrong with you." And then my child ended up being so sick, she broke a rib from coughing. Well, of
Oh my.
course, we never went back to this pediatrician. I did go to her and say some choice words, right? Because my instinct told me there was something going on with her, and I'm coming to you, the specialist, and then this is what's happening, right? So we have to listen to our mom instinct. I learned that through this whole journey, and it doesn't mean that you're perfect at anything. It just means that you have to learn to rely on that with your child. It's your child, right? So especially if your child is nonverbal, you have to watch these cues. Is my child happy and adjusting at school? And that goes for even a typical kid, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, even my son, who is 11 in public school, and he gets services and things like that. But, when he is not adjusting well, And we got to step back and say, what's happening here? Okay. And then break it down. And one of the best things you could do for your child is to teach them or find an OT therapist or maybe speech therapy also that can talk to you and teach your child about social skills, but their mental emotional cues in their body, like what's happening for them. Like if your child's on the way to school and they always have a bellyache, well, that's probably because they're scared. They're nervous. Something's going on at school. They don't feel comfortable. So talk through this with them, okay? Because usually then you can get to the root of what's happening.
Yeah. When you're like, when you said, what are they feeling? Because they don't usually know how to say what they're feeling. One of the standout moments that popped into my head was anxiety. So when Lev was little, I'm trying to think what age, I want to honestly say kindergarten, like little. And she would just get so mad. So mad.
Right.
And I'm like, but you're not really mad, are you? I'm so mad. I think you're maybe anxious. And she's like, what is that? Right. And so I'm explaining what anxiety is and how you might feel when you're anxious. And because I don't want to say forcing, but basically forcing you into these situations because we didn't know that she had autism at the time or any sensory disorders because she didn't get diagnosed till 8. I was like, I'm forcing you into these situations, like say Walmart. I'm forcing you to go shopping at Walmart.
Yeah.
Like these are the types of situations I'm talking about. Nothing bad or traumatic on the surface, but for somebody who is very sensitive to noises, to crowds, to lights, it is very traumatic. But
it is,
right, you don't know that before. So this anxiety, and so finally, once the word anxiety was explained, it was like a light bulb. So instead of having they didn't get rid of meltdowns. They did help though. And so instead of being really mad or really sad, that was another one. It was mad, sad, happy. Those were the 3 emotions. We had nothing else. We had mad, sad, but it started broadening what could have been an emotion and the feelings that were happening inside and what they meant. So yeah. And then it was a therapist that really helped to, expand more emotional words. That's a huge one. I think that we take for granted as kids just will find these words on their own without being taught.
Sometimes they do. Yeah. And they will. They're so in tune to everything around them, and they hear us and they emulate what they see in our home environment. So we have to watch our P's and Q's. But anyone out there, if you see a child who's melting down, don't judge those people or that child. Leave them alone and let them deal with it. It's their business. And I've had plenty of judgment. Probably you have as well. What worked for me a whole lot with my son was when he was little and he would get worked up and something would be going on. I would usually go down on my knees or squat, sit down on the chair or the sofa, and I would place my hand gently on his tummy and his back and just sort of hug him that way. And I would take my tone down below his.
Yes.
Okay, buddy, what's going on? And 99% of the time, totally diffused the situation, and there were no temper tantrums. It didn't mean they didn't happen. It meant that we had a solution to the problem of whatever to be able to get there from A to B to C instead of these, I have friends whose kids, they have meltdowns 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour later, the kid's still screaming. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I know, first of all, you're losing your mind, right? Because I've been there before, but I'm like, just calm. You've got to keep yourself calm. It is really, really hard, especially I know when my son was little, if he got bored, he'd start just throwing things. I mean, he'd just throw them.
I shouldn't laugh, but it's kind of funny now.
It's funny now it is, but it's like ducking, and oh my God, he's going to break the window or the glass, or you know what I mean? So we had to run interference a lot with him. And it was like, okay, he's becoming destructive. I need somebody in the family because he had 2 older sisters, right? Mom and dad. One of us needs to do something constructive with him. So let's get constructive so that the deconstruction will stop happening. So it was like, a whole nother world we had to step into with him compared to my daughter, the older one.
That
So
was where I was heading in my head, actually, because you
yeah.
have two on the spectrum.
Mhm.
And the saying goes, if you've met somebody on the spectrum, you've met somebody on the spectrum. You don't know about it, right? So, what would be some differences, especially because one's a girl and one's a boy, and there are tons of differences between
Mm,
men and women with
right.
being diagnosed. So, what are some big differences that we maybe don't know?
Well, so right now, 1 in 36 kids by the age of 8 is being diagnosed, and that's mostly boys because, interestingly enough, most of the testing has been geared towards boys. Girls are harder to diagnose, and they tend to get diagnosed later because what usually shows up first is eating disorders, depression, and anxiety. So that's very interesting, I think. Now, for the difference between one of the things that helped me with my son was I saw signs very early with him. Now he was an intrauterine growth restricted baby, so he stopped growing in utero. And usually with a child like that, you're going to have delays somewhere. Okay.
Mhm.
But I started seeing signs of things I recognized in him that my daughter had done, like the verbal delay. It was just different. His verbal delay was different than her verbal, like it wasn't even English.
Yeah.
And he literally had his 2-year vaccinations and then regressed. So we literally are a family who had that regression from vaccination that he's considered vaccine damage now. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. So I would say for boys, I think there's probably more aggression that happens. And I think ADHD shows up sooner in boys than it does in girls for whatever reason, because the way their brain is, the way the brain is wired and stuff. But, a lot of times you don't see girls pacing back and forth. You see boys pacing back and forth, right? And so, okay, is this hyperactivity? Is it just being a boy, or is it actually on the spectrum? And through the research I've done and reading up on things, especially with his diagnosis, is how much symptoms of what I thought were autism are actually ADHD and vice versa.
Oh, they are so overlapped. Yeah.
I know. And so I'm going, oh, okay. Like, and you think you know all this stuff, especially if you're on your second kid, right? but there's so much research that just continually comes out.
Yes.
Like I saw something on a Facebook page recently. These moms had used, I've got to go back. I took a picture of it, but they've used some sort of brain program that is, I don't want to say reversing autism symptoms, but it's definitely helping them. What is a good word to use here? Lesson. Let's say that, right? So I really need to go back and I've got to look at this because I was like, I want to check into this and see if what this is all about, because I've done detoxing with my child, and I have I have had to, because he did not. Can you hold on one second?
Yeah.
Melissa's here. That's all I'll say. Okay, thank you, babe. Okay. This is the real show.
Right?
I've got one kid that just came home. Okay,
nice.
So with my son, I went through detox. I had him detox. And through the detox that happened, actually, I just responded to like Aspire Nutrition. It's one that I use for vitamin for my son. So there was an advertisement on Facebook. It is a powdered form. I've gone through so many vitamins trying to find something that works for him. And because he has MTHFR, which is the acronym for a very long word, which a lot of people with autism have MTHFR, I need to have his vitamins methylated or broken down so his body can utilize them. Okay.
Oh.
So I use Aspire, and someone had posted, they did a Facebook post about it, and they had all these results you can see from it and detoxing and stuff. And so I posted in there and I said, yes, I did detoxing with my son and had significant results with him through his verbal skills and other things. And I'm telling you, probably 20 women messaged me. I was like, oh my God, my phone was ding, 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 ding for like 3 days. What did you do? What did you do? Because they are in that place. Their child is either language delay, nonverbal, autistic. They're just getting a diagnosis. They haven't had one yet, but they're suspicious, that kind of thing. So with detoxing for my son, he went from his verbal skills he started to have some, and then the shots happened, and then they completely went away. So we had to relearn all the verbal skills. And that happened through detoxing. But what also happened was he was a child who nobody could touch him really but me. Like if
That's how mine was.
Oh my gosh, it's awful. Like you're in the stroller, and so my girls are older, right? And we'd be going to games, or I'd need to go to their school for something, and I would just tell people, don't come near the stroller, because the people are like, oh, he's so cute. You know how they are with children, right? Do not come near us, and don't talk to him. Don't, because he would begin screaming bloody murder. It would happen in the grocery store, in the stroller, and people look at you like you're crazy. Your kid's crazy. Like, what is wrong with you?
Oh, I know.
So
just slap them and move on.
I know, right?
More discipline is what they need.
Well, what they need is to go research so they can learn about and understand and have sympathy and compassion and empathy. So through the detoxing, he got where other people could touch him. His family could hold him. His therapist could hug him. One OT therapist he was with when he was little, it was a year before she could even touch him or hug him or anything. Yeah. So that was significant to me. Also, he never could tell me he was hungry. Like his brain and his stomach did not connect. So I just always fed him, knowing on a mom's schedule, a child is hungry every few hours, right? Yeah. They eat frequently, they drink frequently. And so he began to say he was hungry. And so that was around age 4 or 5, maybe right in there somewhere.
And I feel like that's another thing that it's taken for granted, is that, oh, my kid will just tell me when they're hungry.
No, even now he's 11. Even now I have to say something to him sometimes, because he will go all day without eating if I let him. If he's just playing with doing whatever. Yeah. And it's like, if I don't say something, he's not going to say something. Now, sometimes then you've got the other thing, and he's a hamburger, then he has a hot dog, and he was like, yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. You're having a growth spurt, I guess. So, but there's so many dynamics to all of this that we're sitting here talking about all this, Randy, and I'm thinking, Lord, how do we get through all this? And we just stay sane, but
do it because you have no choice, right? Like that's your baby. So you just do it.
You have to do it. Yeah.
So what is something, so we've had a couple of these come up, but what is something that you think, oh, that is something that's taken for granted, but when you're a parent of a kid with autism, oh, it is 10 times hard. Like it's not something you can take for granted.
Hearing I love you from your child. Because when my daughter said it to me, she was between 4 and 5. It's the first time I ever heard it. And I just went, oh my God. I cried and I cried and I cried. And I thought in that very moment, how much we take for granted. We are so spoiled with our typical kids, because my oldest did everything. Everything was on schedule. Everything. She talked early, walked early, crawled early, jumped early. She did everything early, right? But she had tons of sensory issues, and she still does at 24. Like if she gets upset, she's like, don't touch me right now. And I don't take it personally, because I know that what happens when I touch her, she can feel so much of me because of that sensory, that it's almost like electric shock or something. It's really interesting. I'm one who I want the hugs if I'm sad or something, but sometimes she just, so in our house, sensory is it's a lot of language that we use, right? There's a lot of things to use for sensory in our house. And then we are all very understanding of each other when somebody needs space. Nobody gets their feelings hurt. I'm like, why don't you just go to your room? We've all been together. We've had dinner. We've watched a movie. And now everybody needs to go to their separate space,
Just need to take a break.
I think we take those kind of simple, very simple things for granted. We take for granted going on a date night, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
Going to a restaurant, going to the grocery store.
Going to bed.
Going to bed, right? Yeah.
And it continues to be a massive problem for my kid, but she is now almost 18, so I'm not as concerned. But when you have a 2-3-year-old and they're not going to sleep, well, you're not going to sleep.
No. And my 11-year-old still, he won't go to sleep on his own. He's still just, he's so, I get his brain is just working so fast all the time with ADHD, and kids like this tend to have more anxiety. They tend to have, it's just, you just have to learn how to deal with it. When he was little.
I read a study at one point, I can't remember where, because this was a million years ago now, that kids on the spectrum do struggle more with sleep issues.
With what kind of, oh, absolutely.
Sleep issues, right? So there were days that she wouldn't go to sleep. Like literally she would be up for 24 hours. And I'm like, I just need to sleep.
I'm so sorry. I think he would have been in that place with my son, because we've had years of conversation. Why do I have to sleep? Well, because your body has to have it for growing, and mommy has to sleep. So if you don't sleep, mommy doesn't sleep, and that's not good, because mommy, I'm not 20 years old. You know what I mean? I'm like, I need it for my health too. So we don't, those conversations don't usually happen anymore, because he's 11, he's old enough to understand I need sleep. But for years, I think he probably would have done the same thing, Randy, if I couldn't have talked him into it.
Right.
Because for the first 2 years of his life, he didn't sleep. So I was 45, recovering from a C-section, recovering from a post-surgical infection I didn't know that I would survive, and a baby who didn't sleep for 2 years. So it was rough for the first 2 years.
Yeah. And then the only way to get her to go to sleep was if I laid down with her.
Yeah.
So laying down in the toddler bed, hoping she falls asleep. And guess who falls asleep first? Mom. Of course it's mom. Then you wake up, you're like, oh, I'm too old for this.
Yeah, right. Or your child's up and you're like, where the heck's my kid?
Right. Why is there poop on the walls? What?
I know, right?
That only happened once, but it did happen. And it was actually when my mom was babysitting, and I came home after so I was in college, went to college school all day, then went to my placement all night, got home at 12:30 at night. I walk in, there's just painting on the wall with some poop.
Oh, you know what? It's so funny. Okay, that's not funny. But what's interesting is that you've got kids who that happens to, and then you have children like mine who won't touch it, and it takes forever to get them to wipe themselves and be potty trained.
Oh, the wiping themselves, that is on the list of taking for granted.
Absolutely. And you know what the OT therapist does? They will tell you, now they may do this with your child or have you do it at home. Make chocolate pudding and have your kid play in it. Put their hands in it. That will desensitize them to wiping their butt.
See, I don't think her issue was that. I think the issue was literally just like, I can't see it, so why does it matter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Threw out a lot of pairs of tights, because at that time too, she didn't like layers of clothing. And so generally you think of layers of clothing as like your t-shirt and your sweater. No. Underwear, pants, that is a layer. So we didn't wear underwear for the longest time.
So again, you had one of your free-spirited kind of kids. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So then you're not wearing underwear, you're not wiping. And I'm talking, she's little now, at the time, right? So we just had to keep rebuying new tights over and over and over and over, because well, you know what?
I've thrown out lots of underwear. Yeah, we've thrown out lots of Carson's underwear. I'm like, dude, you know what? I can go get some for very cheap. This is a disaster. I'm not going to save this underwear. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So how she finally started is Santa brought her every type of underwear in every store.
Okay.
Boys underwear, girls underwear, booty shorts, the tighter ones, the looser ones, the this material, that material, ones with tags, ones without tags, literally all of them, every kind of underwear we could find.
Wow.
Santa Brett.
Very cool.
Because you try everything you can until you find something that works. And we have actually, I shouldn't say finally. That was probably 17 now, probably about almost 10 years ago now. So
yeah. Well, and you have children who can be late bedwetters, and they can, going through the whole friendship thing is not a normal process for them either. It's really difficult. So my middle daughter, she grew up with the same kind of friends her whole life, and everyone just, they all accept each other and all that stuff. And then going to college, freshman year is pretty good. Sophomore year was really difficult. Almost didn't go back this year because of an experience with a narcissistic friend, roommate actually. And she actually had never been around someone like that before. Like nobody in her life had ever, none of us are narcissistic. So, that experience just about took her down. And it's because I think children who are on the spectrum, what I find, and, definitely your Down syndrome kiddos. And I have friends who have kiddos with all kinds of challenges, right? The innocence of the heart is just a beautiful thing. And they're not geared toward, I think by nature, cruelty and mean. They have a more open heart about things and an innocence about them that is so beautiful that I think is taken for granted too.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So as we begin to wrap up,
we could talk for hours.
Right, we totally could.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already given lots of different pieces of wisdom, but what piece of wisdom would you give to a parent who is just starting to go, I think maybe there are signs?
Yeah, that something is off with my child. And I don't like that language, Randi, like something's off or something's wrong or whatever, because it's not that, but it's out of the norm of what we consider typical. Let's use that language, right? Maybe that's better language to use, because kids have milestones, right? And when they don't hit those milestones, then we're like, what's happening with my child? Yeah. And some of those milestones I think are getting later and later with pediatricians, but I would say if by 14 months your child is not walking, talk to the pediatrician about it. And you need to keep a diary or a journal of what you see your child doing. Like some signs I think are, you're giggling with. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I think some kids sometimes those signs that children show are very evident and very, if you got a kid spinning in circles and they're flapping their hands and they're walking on their toes and they're doing all kinds of things that you're like, okay, is this normal for a child to do? If you're like a first-time parent, you're like, I don't know. And, but what I would say to you is you have to trust your instinct on this. And being their advocate, you need to go and talk first to the pediatrician, because that's sort of where those questionnaires start for parents. Like the pediatricians usually give them to you early on. Is your child doing this, this, and this, and this? And then if they haven't, but you're already in preschool, then you need to ask the daycare or preschool teacher what they're seeing at school. Is it the same thing that you're seeing at home? Or do they have any concerns? Don't just shut them down and don't ignore them, because the sooner you get services for your child or therapies, OT, speech, PT, feeding, whatever it is that your child may need, the quicker they can overcome a lot. I have 2 children who you'd never even know they had a language issue. You'd never know they didn't talk. You'd never know they had lots of things that they did have, because
I don't know. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt for a hot
second. It's okay.
I don't know your son. I don't know your daughter either, but your daughter sing.
Yes.
There is no way that when you first sent me like one of their music videos, I went, she told me that her daughter couldn't talk until whatever. Yeah, you would not be able to tell at all.
No, you can't tell with my son or daughter unless you are someone like me or someone like you, or maybe that's your job, that's what you do. You know what I mean? Because we worked so hard over the years, and that's what it requires. You want your kid to have the most normal life they can. And what I mean by that is the most successful experiences they can have, right? To have to be empowered in their life, to feel empowered, right? Not to walk around and think something is wrong with them, they're bad, they're different. Different is not always bad, okay? I mean, we have a lot of whatever you want to call different in the world that have created huge things. I mean, like Mr. Walt Disney was different, like what he created, right? If he wasn't different, he wouldn't have created all that because his brain wouldn't have worked the same way. But my point is, follow your instinct. You are their advocate. And so you have to speak up for them, even if that means changing a pediatrician because they're not listening to you. Don't worry about hurting that pediatrician's feelings.
We changed doctors.
Yeah, we did too. The teacher, if they're not meshing with the teacher, then ask for a child to be changed into another classroom. And my advice to you is don't get ugly. Don't go in screaming. Don't go in with guns blazing. Be the diplomat and the mediator. Because in the end, it's about your child and everybody coming together to work together for the best of that child. That's my advocacy training there for you to go and help parents. But, all of this is very important. And the more that you do this, the more that you advocate for your child, the better life your child's going to have. But it teaches your child how to advocate for themselves.
Yes. And I think that's one of the biggest
so important
markers of success as a parent. Like, that's how I feel. I feel like, wow, she's telling this other person that she doesn't know. So he starts college next week. Fingers crossed that it works.
Oh, okay. Yes. Pray. Yes.
But we had to go to the accessibility office, right? And get all the different things set up. And
you got to do that even in college. Yes.
Yeah. And I just sat there quietly. Once in a while I would interject, but I just tried to sit there quietly because you're in college, like you're going to be a grown-up. Like you have to do this. And I was so proud of the fact that as the accessibility officer is talking and she's like, well, do you think that you might need whatever service, this computer program? And she's telling her all about it. And Lev goes, yeah, that'd be good. Because, so not just, yeah, that'd be good, but that'd be good because I do. And I'm just sitting there going,
wow,
I succeeded
that's
as
fantastic.
a parent because you are, explaining yourself.
That is just so fantastic, Randi. I am so excited to hear that your child could do that for themselves. And it's really important because when a child has got like a language delay or other delays or ADHD or all these things that the world they're hearing is wrong, or there's something wrong with you, their self-esteem goes in the toilet. And then they don't stand up for themselves. And it's really hard for them. It's really hard. And so we have to teach them how to do that. And it's really important. The girls, so Randi's saying my girls are music artists. So they sing together, Sisters with an S-J. You have to go check them out because the last song, now we put out Christmas songs last year in December, but the song we put out last year, Breathe In, is all about breathing in and remembering who you are, who God made you to be in this world, right? And so we have kids with Down syndrome, we've got kids with autism in the video, and it's all about coming together and celebrating who we are. So that's like their platform. It's bridging that diversity and inclusivity gap, which is really important to our family, per se. And then they've got some other music that's coming out soon. They just won for the International Singer-Songwriters Association last weekend, just won gold for vocal duo of the year, which was like,
wow,
oh my God, So, don't ever tell your kid they can't do something. Don't ever just look at them and maybe they've got stuff happening and you go, well, there's not much hope or my child can't do that. No, encourage them.
Yes. So what do you got in the works going on right now?
Well, let's see. I'm finishing up a middle grade reader I was editing earlier today that will come out. I'm hoping this year sometime. This has been a really long project, and it is a bullying, but it's a redemption story. So it's really about taking ownership of behavior and learning how to be a better friend and teaching your friend how to be a better friends. So that's important to me. So I've got that going on, and growing my radio listenership is really, a very important thing to me as well, because I've been doing it so long, and I'm just so excited for it to be growing like it is. It's like, wow, I'm so grateful. I am starting to teach through Autism Tennessee. It's called Building Bridges. And so we're working to get into preschools, daycares, and schools, not just locally, but anywhere, with early signs and symptoms of autism and how to help. So it's an actual training. So anyone out there who might be interested in that, please connect with me. And then I've been working on sensory rooms and sensory spaces and sensory kits with different organizations, libraries. We just applied for a grant and got a grant through Kentucky Fried Chicken for $10,000. So we have 4 libraries. We're going to help them start their sensory rooms. So
That's cool.
Yeah. So I love this. So if anybody out there is interested in that, please connect with me, because that's something I'm passionate about, is like making sure everything is more sensory aware, sensory friendly, because we're all sensory beings. I don't care if you're on the spectrum or not, you experience the world through your senses. So it applies to everybody.
Oh, that is exciting. And so what are the other things that you've written?
Okay, so I have my children's book series it's called the Inspired Kids series, and it's Perfectly Me, Look at Me, The Wonder of Me. And it was all inspired by my son and how he came into this world with challenges, so that my goal is to help kids be more empowered by knowing however they came into this world, they are okay. You are okay just how you are. You're great. You're amazing. It's got positive language in there. So I have that, and I've got a Cheers coming out, and then I've got 6 anthologies. One just came out August 13th, called Bold Risk, Big Rewards. And that was all about the risk that I took on myself getting published as an author. Not just because I sat on that manuscript for 2 years going, oh, who wants to read what I write, right? But something just kept saying, you got to do this. And then all the things that have come from it, because I listened, because I got quiet and I said, okay, I'm just going to take a chance on myself, right?
Yeah.
And so that is really cool. And then I've got we just signed a contract in December. We haven't gotten around to it yet because we're working on some other stuff, but a series, a middle grade reader series, the 8 keys of excellence. And each key represents like commitment, walks with purpose, integrity. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be cool. So, but I am working on how to effectively raise a highly sensitive, intuitive, and empathic children, because there's not a lot of stuff out there for that.
Yeah. That is awesome. So you are keeping very busy.
Very busy, girl. Very busy. And it's, some days it's not as busy sometimes, but I manage my stuff I do, and I manage my girls, and you have to, I live by my calendar, because if it's not on there, I won't be there.
Exactly. And color coded. Mine is color coded.
I like that. Yes. Color coded. That's great. Love it.
So because you're so very busy, where do people follow you to stay up to date with all of these very busy things?
Okay. Well, they can go to my website, maryejackson.com. And on there, it's got links to my shows. It also has links to my girls' music, but I've got a downloadable spot there where you can go and get some free downloadables. And it's like, there's one on like how to help, healthy writing, how to write either for your mental health or to get started as an author, writer, whatever. But also there's some downloadables for mental health with your children, how to have those conversations, how to help them. And with your highly, your sensory kids, there's things to do with kiddos there. So that's a great place to connect. And down at the bottom, it tells you how to contact me if you want to. But I'm on Facebook, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. I'm on Instagram. I think it's Mary E. Jackson 5, because we're the Jackson 5. I'm on Threads, but the same thing, LinkedIn and TikTok. I do a lot of TikTok videos. Most of them are about books and stuff, but I'm going to start, I think I'm going to go over there and do some live stuff and just some real heart to heart about parenting and kids and,
Yeah.
ownership and, that kind of stuff. So
Lots of stuff, all the
stuff we need
stuff,
to talk about. Stuff we need to
right?
talk about. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being on the show. So remember that this is not the first time that she has been on the show. So you want to look back in our episodes. Oh, probably near-ish the beginning, probably within the first 50 episodes, somewhere in there, I feel like. So
How many episodes have you done now?
over 200 now.
Whoop, 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 whoop. Girl, you're bad. You bad. That's awesome.
It's so much fun.
Yes.
Absolutely love it.
Congratulations.
And I meet such cool people.
Man, it's so cool interviewing people. I mean, it's like everybody has a story, It's so cool. So cool.
Exactly.
And thank you.
So thank
You're
you
so
so
cool.
much. Thanks for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me. I am so enjoying this, and we could talk forever, like we said.
We totally could.
Yeah.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RV Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.